Gun battle took place in 3 different spots near Trinity Avenue, where a total of 6 people were shot. 3 have died. One of them, a rapper Davon Bennett, who goes by the stage name King Von. GBI says King Von and a group of men left Opium nightclub and went to Monaco Hookah Lounge early Friday morning. Investigators say after they arrived, 2 men approached the group in the parking lot and an argument ensued. From there,
Yo, what's good, gang? Y'all are not ready for what I'm about to break down for you today because we're talking about Lil Tim. And this man has been moving different lately. Like the signs are all there heavy. He's been hinting, he's been posting, he's been talking that talk. And when you put it all together, bro, it is not looking good for OTF at all. But before I get into what Tim's been doing right now and how it's escalating everything, I gotta take y'all all the way back because if you don't know the full story with every single detail, none of this is going to hit the way it's supposed to hit deep in your chest. We're going from that tragic night of King Von's death in Atlanta to Lul Pabb getting killed in that LA situation, all the way to where we are right now with Lil Tim turning up the heat. So strap in, gang. This one is going to be a super long one. Longer than before. And trust me, you do not want to tap out early because the end of this breakdown, that's where it gets really insane with all the layers connecting. Let's get into it proper. So let's start from the very beginning because to understand everything that's happening right now with Lil Tim, you got to understand what started all of this chaos in the first place. And it all traces back to one fateful night, November 6, 2020, out in Atlanta, Georgia, specifically outside the Monaco Hookah Lounge on that early morning. That night, King Von, one of the most talented, most raw, and most loved rappers to ever come out of Chicago streets, was shot and killed in a hail of bullets. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat it one bit, gang. That night was absolutely devastating for an entire generation and culture in drill music. The Atlanta Police Department and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation laid out the details clear. The gun battle erupted and played out in multiple different spots near Trinity Avenue, with a total of several people hit by gunfire, leading to tragic deaths and injuries on multiple sides. King Von, whose real name was Davon Bennett, found himself right at the center of that deadly confrontation. King Von wasn't just some regular rapper passing through. This man was a master storyteller with a cinematic gift that locked the whole world in every single time he dropped a track. Every song felt like you were watching a full movie unfold right in front of your eyes. Raw streets, real pain, real hustle, real survival stories from the trenches. He had just dropped major projects like Welcome to O-Block that had the streets and the industry buzzing hard. And he was collaborating on heavy hitters with Lil Durk like What It Means to Be King, building that unbreakable brotherly chemistry. The entire industry was at his feet, doors opening wider than ever before, mainstream crossover potential looking crazy. At just 26 years old, he was on the brink of that next level takeover where your name echoes far beyond just the drill scene into households everywhere. But just like that, in the blink of an eye during a chaotic parking lot moment, it was all gone forever. The chaos kicked off after Von and his crew left Opium nightclub and pulled up to the hookah lounge spot. Words got exchanged fast with members connected to Quando Rondo's circle. Old tensions boiled over quick into a physical confrontation, and then gunshots rang out loud in the night air. Von was hit multiple times, rushed to the hospital in a desperate attempt to save him, but he didn't make it out alive. Here's where the story really begins for what we're talking about today and why it's still burning years later. Because this wasn't some random no-context drive-by shooting. There was a clear confrontation and a man widely identified in surveillance footage, witness accounts, and official reports as the primary shooter in that moment was Timothy Leaks, better known as Lul Tim. Now, let me break this entire situation down for y'all, slow and detailed, because the layers run extremely deep and affect everything we're seeing now. Von and his crew had run into Quando Rondo's people that night, and there was already some pre-existing tension between certain circles from past issues and words thrown online and in the streets. Arguments turned physical in seconds, tempers flared out of control, and in the heat of that mutual fight, shots were fired from different directions. In all the madness and chaos, King Von caught those fatal bullets. Surveillance footage that later leaked and circulated showed Lul Tim involved as the key figure pulling the trigger according to the initial investigations. But it was far from one-sided. Members from Von's camp shot back in self-defense, and sadly, people on Quando Rondo's side took heavy hits too, including the loss of Quando's brother or close associate figures. Both crews felt that deep pain and suffered major losses that same night, turning it into a bloodbath nobody truly won. At the end of the day, the streets and the culture held Lul Tim primarily responsible in a major lasting way for King Von's death. OTF, which stands for Only the Family, Lil Durk's tight-knit label, crew, and extended family, they never forgot that night for a single second. They never let it go, and they made that crystal clear through emotional music tributes, social media posts, interviews, and that unbreakable energy for years afterward. Now, what happened to Lil Tim? On the legal side, this part gets crazy complicated and twists in ways that still anger a lot of people. He was initially charged charged with serious counts including felony murder. A lot of folks thought right away, okay, he's locked up for a long time, justice incoming. But the legal battle twisted hard. Georgia's self-defense laws played a big role, and Tim's legal team argued strongly that the entire shooting happened in the middle of a mutual combat situation, not a straight premeditated ambush. Over time, the main murder charges against him got dismissed before a full trial, and he ended up walking without doing any significant long-term prison time for the killing. When that news dropped across the internet and the streets, everything exploded. OTF fans were furious beyond words. Lil Durk himself was furious and vocal about it. The whole Chicago drill community felt like real justice was not served the way the loss of such a talent deserved. And that's exactly when the temperature on this whole situation went from already hot to absolutely boiling over into what we see today. That dismissal lit a fire that still burns bright years later. People went back and forth debating self-defense claims versus the final tragic outcome. But in the streets where loyalty and loss rule, court rulings don't always match the emotional code. Vaughn was more than just a label mate to Durk. They were like real blood brothers, sharing deep history, music, and life moments. Durk poured all that raw pain and grief into multiple tracks, kept Vaughn's name and legacy alive constantly in interviews, on social media, and in everything he did. The whole OTF camp adopted that we remember and we never forget posture that has not faded even a little bit to this day. They turned that grief into drive and motivation for their careers, but it also kept the underlying beef and tension alive in the wider drill culture. Now, fast forward through the years and layer in more history because this cycle of pain didn't stop or slow down after that Atlanta night. Let me introduce you to the next major piece of this puzzle, Lul Pabb. If you're not super deep in Chicago drill or this specific world, you might be asking who exactly is Lul Pabb and why does he matter so much? Real name Xavier Robinson. He was a young man from the Chicago streets with very strong, close ties to Quando Rondo's extended circle and affiliates. He wasn't just some distant background figure. He was family in that street sense, running in the same circles, sharing the same world and loyalties. His death hit different and carried heavy weight because of those direct connections. Lul Pabb was killed in the targeted shooting out in Los Angeles in August 2022. This didn't feel like some isolated random street act in the eyes of those watching closely. It felt very targeted, like a direct retaliation tied back to the unresolved tensions from Vaughn's death. Later federal charges and indictments painted a broader picture involving OTF affiliates allegedly in a murder-for-hire type plot that was originally aimed at Quando Rondo himself, but tragically ended up taking Lul Pabb's life instead. Lil Durk and several others from the camp faced serious legal heat around conspiracy charges and more in connection to that LA incident. Whether every single detail has been fully proven in every court or not, the streets drew their own fast conclusions. This loss was extremely personal for Lul Tim, because Lul Pabb was from the same world, same circles, same affiliations, and same extended family vibe. When Pabb got killed, it wasn't just another random name added to a long list for Lul Tim. This was his people, his close ones, someone he broke bread with. In that environment, losing someone that close doesn't usually lead to just filing police reports and sitting back waiting for slow justice. The response in the streets often feels way more direct, immediate, and rooted in that code of loyalty. And Tim has been making it very, very clear through his recent actions, words, and overall movement that he's not letting this one slide quietly into the past. This is precisely where the current situation gets wild and dangerous. Tim has been highly active on social media platforms, posting consistently, dropping hints left and right, and moving in ways that are raising serious eyebrows all across the drill scene and beyond. He's not always keeping it super vague either. Some of the energy and subtext feels as direct as a bold statement without spelling every letter. Now, I'm not sitting here saying definitively that Tim has done specific things or carried out actions, because legally we stick to confirmed facts and not assumptions or rumors. But what he has been publicly putting out there, the consistent pattern of posts, the perfect timing on some of them, the references to fresh loss, and the need to respond, it all tells a very clear story that people in the comments, on forums, and in the streets are reading loud and extremely clear. He's been talking heavy about Pabb, referencing the deep pain of that loss, making it obvious this isn't something he's just grieving in private silence and then moving on like nothing happened. The posts carry a certain aggressive, confrontational, and charged vibe that stands out. An energy that comment sections and street discussions interpret straight up as, "I'm not just talking, something's coming." The timing of some of those posts, relative to other events in the scene, has the streets putting two and two together fast. Gang, this whole thing is explosive and scary. because OTF is Lil Durk's solid camp, the ones who lost Von in such a brutal way and never forgave or forgot the role Tim played. When you have Lul Tim, the figure forever tied to Von's death, now making this kind of noise about sliding or responding to Pabb's situation, it loops everything back into one massive, never-ending, high-stakes conflict. This isn't some light rap beef with a few diss tracks going back and forth for streams. This is real life with real bodies dropped, real families destroyed forever, real trauma passed down, and consequences that keep stacking higher and higher with every new chapter. Let's build even more context and depth on why OTF specifically feels like they're in the direct crosshairs here. Only the family is Durk's loyal label, his core crew, and his extended family unit that moves as one. King Von was easily one of their biggest stars and closest brothers in every sense. Durk took that loss harder than almost anything else in his entire career. You could hear it in his voice during interviews, see it in his eyes, and feel it pouring out of every tribute song. He dedicated multiple tracks to Von, kept the memory alive constantly across social media, in live shows, and in private moments. The whole OTF camp lives by that "we remember everything" motto. So when Tim finally resolved his legal issues and started getting more visible online again, with that aggressive, unapologetic tone, it got noticed immediately by everyone paying attention. With Pabb's death layered right on top of the old wounds, and Tim seemingly responding in the exact way he's responding through socials and energy, it puts OTF right in the crosshairs of someone who's already shown in the past that he won't back down when things get heated. That's actually insane when you step way back and look at the full big picture with fresh eyes. Y'all seeing this clear? This is not a drill or fake entertainment. This is real life with real guns, real grief, and real consequences that have already claimed multiple young lives way too soon. Let's go much deeper on King Von's impact and legacy, because sometimes just saying rapper killed doesn't land the full emotional weight it deserves. King Von was truly different from the pack. He possessed a storytelling ability that comes along maybe once in a full generation in hip-hop. The way he painted vivid pictures of the trenches, the old block problems, the crazy wild stories from his come-up, it made you feel like you were right there riding shotgun with him through every bar. He turned raw survival experiences from one of Chicago's hardest environments like O-Block into art that resonated with millions globally, from the streets to the suburbs. From his roots, he survived things that most regular people couldn't even begin to imagine surviving. And he flipped all that into a catalog of music that had established legends nodding in respect. Projects dropping back-to-back, features with the biggest names, the momentum building like a freight train. He was clearly on the path to becoming a generational talent. Mainstream was calling his name loud. Then one single parking lot confrontation in Atlanta at around 3 a.m. took all of that incredible potential away in the worst way. The music he never got to finish making, the growth he never got to complete, the family and kids left behind to navigate life without him. It's genuinely heartbreaking on every level. And that's exactly why OTF, the broader streets, and the fans have never let it go for a moment. What was lost that night wasn't replaceable by anyone else. It fueled a fire of pain and anger that keeps burning hot. Back to Tim and the social media battlefield that keeps escalating this. In drill culture especially, Instagram, Twitter, and all those platforms are basically a second war zone where messages get sent without saying everything outright. For a while after Von's death, Tim kept a relatively lower profile while dealing with all the heavy legal heat on his back. But once that legal pressure started clearing up, he ramped up his visibility in a big way. The posts turned noticeably more aggressive, confrontational, and full of subtext that anyone fluent in the culture and the lingo picks up on instantly. Again, being responsible here, not every single post is a direct spelled-out threat, but the overall vibe, the energy shifts, the references to recent losses, and handling unfinished business have people speculating and analyzing heavily online. Some posts seem perfectly timed with events happening after Pabb's death, leading a lot of folks to believe that Tim might have already moved in some ways, or is actively preparing something. Whether any of that street speculation is fully true or not, when that many voices in comments, drill forums, and private discussions are saying the exact same thing, it's definitely worth paying close attention to. The pattern is consistent and hard to ignore. Quando Rondo fits into all of this in a very heavy central way too. Real name Taquian Bowman. He was right there present that night in 2020. He's always maintained publicly that he didn't personally shoot Von, and most reports do point to Tim as the main shooter. But Quando was there with his crew when it went down. OTF has held him responsible in spirit and energy because it was his circle, his people, and his night that led to the tragedy. Quando has faced his own series of legal storms and issues since then, and his past ties to Tim make the whole dynamic even more complicated and messy. Lul Pabb was deep in that general orbit, which is exactly why his 2022 death carries so much extra weight and meaning in this ongoing feud. If OTF affiliates were involved as alleged in those federal cases, then Tim's current energy feels like a direct response, looping everything straight back to the original Von situation. This creates a vicious cycle with no clear end in sight. One death leads to built-up tension. Tension leads to more conflict. Conflict leads to even more losses, and it just keeps feeding itself in a loop. Every single person lost in this was somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's best friend, or somebody's hope for the future. Lul Pabb was that to his people and circle. Now Tim appears ready or positioned to potentially make others feel the exact same pain and emptiness he felt when he lost Pat. This is where I dial the energy down just a little bit, because it's important to acknowledge that real human beings with real hearts, real families, and real futures are at the absolute center of all this mess. These kinds of stories rarely ever end with somebody coming out as a clear winner on top. They usually end with longer and longer lists of names on RIP shirts, more funerals that tear communities apart, more mothers crying tears that never seem to stop, and more young potential wasted before it could fully bloom. But the present-day situation is exactly what everybody's watching with held breath right now. Tim is out here being vocal, posting frequently, moving with that certain energy that makes a lot of people in the scene nervous and on edge. The big question on everyone's mind is what happens next in this powder keg. OTF and Dirk's side aren't naive or blind to any of it. They know the full history, they know the current vibes, and they know the players involved. When you sense that somebody might be coming for you or your circle, you don't just sit around idle waiting for the other shoe to drop. So right now it's essentially two very charged, very motivated sides with a ton of painful history between them. Fresh losses adding fuel, and high emotions running on all sides. The indicators we can see publicly aren't really pointing toward any peaceful resolution or cooling off period anytime soon. Zooming out even broader to see the bigger implications, drill music has always had violence and real life intertwined with the art in a way that's both super authentic to the experiences and extremely dangerous at the same time. These artists are rapping straight from their real lives, their real environments, their real beefs, and their real losses. And that's exactly what gives the music that undeniable raw edge that fans crave and connect with so hard. But it also means that when the music and the social media references hit too close to real ongoing beef and real conflicts, the real-world consequences are right there waiting just around the corner. Lul Tim stands as a very interesting and complicated case study in all of this. He's not just some random person caught up in the conflict by accident. He has his own music career that he's been trying to push, releasing tracks, building a brand, and stepping out as an artist in his own right. Yet in the eyes of the streets and the wider public, he's primarily known and defined through the context of what happened that night in Atlanta. His identity in this entire story feels inseparable from that parking lot moment. And now with everything fresh involving Pabb, Tim is once again becoming a major focal point of one of the biggest, longest-running conflicts in all of drill culture. The fact that he seems to be leaning into it fully, posting more, hinting heavier, and suggesting rather than trying to stay completely quiet and low-key for safety, that tells you everything you need to know about where his headspace is at in this moment. To expand this even further, think about all the ripple effects this has caused over the years. King Von's young kids growing up without their father there to guide them. The trauma that spreads through entire Chicago neighborhoods where these kinds of losses keep piling up and sometimes get seen as almost normal by the younger generation coming up. The way drill music both powerfully documents that pain and sometimes unintentionally amplifies the cycle for new listeners. Artists on every side of this have poured their souls out into music about these events. Dirk with emotional tributes that hit different, others with their perspective on survival and loyalty. But no matter how many tracks drop, the music itself doesn't bring any of the lost souls back. It doesn't heal the families, it doesn't magically stop the next chapter of retaliation from brewing. Lul Tim's personal journey from that 2020 incident, through the long legal battles, the emotional weight, and now being vocal and active again, shows exactly how these situations can trap people in a corner for years. Self-defense legal arguments, unbreakable street codes, deep loyalty to your circle, they all clash hard with the cold reality that more violence almost always just creates even more victims on all sides. Let's talk more in depth about the music side of things because it's so central to why this resonates with so many. King Von had bars and storytelling that felt like short action films or documentaries. Tracks like Crazy Story took listeners inside the action, the mindset, the consequences in a way that was unmatched. He was clearly building a legacy that could have changed the entire sound and direction of drill storytelling for the next decade. His death froze all that incredible potential in time. Lil Durk, stepping up as the big brother figure in the camp, has carried a lot of it forward, but the open wound has never fully closed. On the flip side, Tim has dropped his own music that reflects his life experiences, his version of survival, and his perspective on that Atlanta night and everything after. He's spoken in past interviews about protecting his people, the chaos that night, the heavy aftermath, and trying to move forward while carrying the weight. Quando Rondo has addressed it multiple times too, maintaining his own account of events while dealing with the constant target on his back from different angles. These aren't just fictional characters playing roles in some scripted drama. They're real men dealing with real pressures from street expectations, sudden fame, industry politics, and personal survival, all mixed together. The federal cases and indictments add yet another massive layer of drama and complexity to the whole situation. Those legal documents naming OTF affiliates in the alleged plot around the LA shooting that took Pabb's life, the reported bounty elements, the coordination across states, it shows how this feud has grown way beyond just local street beef into something that draws national investigations and headlines. Flights booked, rental cars used, communications monitored. The feds tried to paint a full picture of organized responses tied back to avenging Vaughn's death. Tim, watching his own circle get hit again with Pabb's loss, responds with that increased public energy and activity. It's almost like watching a dangerous chess game where every single move risks real checkmate with actual guns and lives instead of plastic pieces on a board. The stakes involved are enormous beyond words. Music careers that could blow up or get cut short, personal freedom hanging in the balance, and families that could be changed forever. Digging even deeper into the full timeline to connect more dots. After the 2020 shooting, Tim bonded out while the case dragged on for years, creating constant stress. Then in 2023, the main charges were dismissed, giving him that freedom to breathe but also putting him back fully into the public mix. Pabb's killing happened in 2022, amid all those heightened tensions, acting like gasoline on old flames. By 2024 and into 2025, and now, with various arrests and ongoing legal situations for people on Dirk's side, Tim's online and public activity has ramped up noticeably. Posts referencing loyalty to fallen friends, the pain of loss, and the need for action have been dissected frame by fans. Supporters on all sides keep fueling it with comment wars, theory videos breaking down every emoji or caption, and street interviews where people pick sides. The culture consumes this drama like entertainment, but the real human toll, the grieving families, the scared kids, the lost futures, is what often gets overlooked in the hype. What about the deeper psychological side that nobody talks about enough? Growing up in environments where violence is sometimes seen as the only real form of survival and respect, losing close ones at a young age creates a hardened mindset of it's us against them. That's hard to shake. Grief turns into burning anger fast, and that anger often seeks an outlet in action. Tim has described in various ways feeling the heavy weight of that Atlanta night, the split-second realization, the hospital scenes, the long legal fight, and the street judgment that followed. Vaughn fans and OTF felt completely robbed of a rising star who was just hitting his prime. It's multiple layers of trauma feeding off each other across years, with no easy answers, no simple heroes, and no clear villains. Just complicated human beings caught in a system that's bigger than any one person. In the drill world, social media acts like a megaphone that amplifies every little thing. A somewhat vague post can get interpreted as a full declaration of war in the comment sections within minutes. Tim's content has carried that specific undertone for a while now. Not always spelling out every detail, but the subtext hits hard for those who speak the language fluently. Phrases about handling business, remembering the fallen, and shifts in overall energy, especially after certain events. People speculate he's already slid on something or is actively planning the next move. Meanwhile, OTF stays aware, protective, and ready. This kind of tension could explode suddenly or continue to simmer under the surface for a long time. But looking at history and similar situations, these things rarely just fade away quiet and peaceful on their own. To add even more layers, consider the other players involved on the edges. The many associates, the younger generation watching everything and sometimes feeling pressure to pick a side or join in. The role that money, clout chasing, and industry politics play when they mix dangerously with old street codes. How managers and labels try to steer artists toward peace for the sake of careers but can't always control the streets calling. Past interviews where Tim or Quando have broken down their personal truths add even more human layers, talking about protection first, not starting aggression, or however they choose to frame their realities. Vaughn's music catalog still lives strong with streams staying consistent years later, but the man himself and all his unrealized potential are gone forever. The ultimate tragedy in this never-ending cycle is the massive waste of life and talent. So much potential cut short too early, families broken apart permanently, entire communities scarred with grief that passes down generations. King Von could have easily been that generational voice who changed drill and hip-hop for the better. Lul Pabb was young and still had his own path and dreams ahead. Lul Tim now carries the permanent label of the shooter from that night. Lil Durk balances building a big empire while always having this dark shadow following. Wanting something better for everybody involved is the easy part to say out loud. Actually achieving real change and peace in this world is the extremely hard part that few manage. Right now, with Tim's continued activity and the way things are lining up, it feels like it's heading somewhere dark and heavy, unless some kind of major shift or intervention happens soon. We started this long breakdown with that 2020 night in Atlanta, the shooting, the immediate losses, and the chaos. We covered the legal twists that let Tim walk, Pabb's death and its connections, Tim's response through social media and energy. OTF sitting right in the middle, still holding that painful memory of Vaughn close. This full extended breakdown shows a conflict with roots that go extremely deep, and branches that are still growing wild. I don't know how any of this ends, gang. I genuinely don't. But I do know that the pattern of how these kinds of situations have gone in the past should make everyone watching feel the heavy weight of what's happening here. Because history in these streets does not have a strong track record of resolving peacefully without more pain first. What I do know for sure is that King Von deserved so much better than how it ended. Lul Pabb's family and people deserve better. And honestly, everybody caught up in this destructive cycle deserves way better than what it keeps delivering to them over and over. But wanting something better and a situation actually becoming better, those are two very different things. And right now, the situation looks like it's heading somewhere dark.